Momento Mori. That's what Trappist monks say to each other when they greet each other every morning when they wake up and before they go to bed. Momento Mori. It means remember you're mortal. Remember you're dying. I always hesitate to say this because I know grief is the most challenging thing we go through. I understand that. I've grieved through my parents' and friends' deaths, very close friends as well. I understand the whole grieving process. I also understand why it's important we have to laugh and find humor going through that process. So, as Patch Adams said before in an earlier class, it's not chronic. We don't stay there. You can't stay there. They're dead. You're alive. Live. You're sad. Of course you're going to be sad. That's a given. If you're not going to be sad when somebody dies, dear Lord, when are you going to be sad? The secret is to be sad, accept the sadness, and then find a way to move through it so you can move on with your life. And that's what this whole series is about, is how can we find humor and laughter in the grief? Memento Mori. Remember you're dying. Remember you're mortal. We're all going to die. It's not if, it's just how and when. What I'm going to show you here in this first series is some examples. Well, take it away, Tom. Show them how you do it.
The matriarch of my family was my great aunt, Aunt Ruth. Aunt Ruth and Cousin Mary would play cards every night. One day we finally got the call that Aunt Ruth had died. You know, all the family assembles. Cousin Mary was telling the story, said, we were playing cards just like we always play cards. Ruth got up from the table, said she didn't feel real well, walked into the next room, sat down, and died. And then Mary said, frankly, I didn't think I'd really dealt her that bad a hand. Any sadness we felt about Aunt Ruth's death was gone. It really is vital. It's important to people to find that passageway from a bad time to a good time.
Now, as Tom said, it took away the sadness. Some people, it takes away the sadness completely, sometimes just for 5 seconds, maybe 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days. I don't know. It's important that you find a way to do it. And all these examples here are going to show you how to do it. And there's a great quote by George Bernard Shaw. You've heard me say this. I'm going to constantly repeat this, especially during this section in this series on grief. Life does not cease to be funny when something bad happens any more than it ceases to be serious when we are laughing. Just because we are laughing doesn't mean it's not serious. And just because it's serious doesn't mean we can't laugh at it. And there are funny, honest moments that happened during the grief and death process. And my great buddy Jim Fazell is going to tell you one right now.
My father, Jerome J. Fazell, was one of the nicest and kindest men I've ever met. He was a grammarian, and he defined all the religion words for Merriam-Webster's International Dictionary. He took a turn for the worse one day after having a stroke. He was in the hospital, and my sister Nancy got a call. Said, you should come down to the hospital. She came down to the hospital with her husband, John, and they came in and said, Dad, how are you? And he said, oh, you didn't have to come all the way down here. She said, what, are you kidding? You know, of course we come all the way down here. It's very important to John and I. And he said, she's like, he bends over, he says, to John and me. And she just laughed, and we tell that story all the time because that was my father to a T.
And as Jim tells me many times when we talk, he said, David, every time we think about that moment, my family, that my father said that, we laugh. And that's the beauty of it, because these memories that we have, they never go away. But what we can do with them is when we remember them, if we have and are blessed to have the funny moments when something happened, a humorous moment, then all that does is, we've talked before about this, and if it's the first time, here's what it does when we find humor and laugh during those moments of sadness. It just turns down the volume and the intensity of the sadness. It doesn't go away. It just helps us maneuver and work our way through it. Here's a wonderful woman, CJ. It's important you know about CJ, the story that she's about to tell you. CJ was part of one of the horrible Denver fires. Not Denver, I think it was the Colorado Springs, or somewhere in there. Some of their horrible, horrible fire out there. She lost 2 homes. And she talks now about keeping things in perspective.
I lost my husband 10 years ago. This was just a house.
Yeah,
you know,
good point.
You know, this was just a house. That was, you know, that was the worst thing. That and losing my father, the worst things I've ever been through. And I think if you put it into perspective like that, it's just stuff.
How about when you lost your husband? How long did it take for any joy to come back in your life after that?
Oh, I had to laugh right away because we had a good time.
Explain.
Going through the pictures, getting ready for his wake.
Really? It's that quick?
That quick. Well, you know, we had fun. That was the key to happiness for us, is always having fun. You've got to remember the good stuff. If you dwell on the bad stuff, then life becomes crappy. And you don't want to live a crappy life. I go back to when my husband died. The most fun we had was all sitting around the dining room table that night, telling funny stories all about everything, you know, throughout his life.
Yeah.
And
Like
the time he sunk a tank.
He sunk a tank?
He sunk a tank in the Rhine River in Germany. They always had, my husband was a tanker in the Army, and they had to ford the tanks, button them all up, and ford a river.
Yeah.
His tank sank to the bottom. Now, he got everybody out. And we were laughing because
his tank drowned?
His tank went under. They had to bring in the tank remover.
And you're sitting around laughing about that.
Oh, and you know, lots of other things. Remember the move where they lost the refrigerator, they lost the couch. You know, how do you lose a refrigerator?
How do you sink a tank?
The first year we had a death of grandmother, uncle, finally my daughter, my dad, my brother-in-law, and 2 or 3 others.
And this is in 1 year?
About a year, maybe 16 months period. And then 2 of my daughter's boyfriends in addition to all of that. Now the humor in all of that is, as we were passing through the funeral and you go by the casket and all that sort of thing, I finally went to the pastor who was standing at the end of the casket and I said, "We've got to stop meeting like this." You know, we need to find another way to meet. This isn't the way I like to meet people, you know. And another thing was with my daughter, whose boyfriend's passed away, we have just got to the point in the last year or so where we can laugh with her and everybody else and say, "Don't date my daughter. Her last 2 boyfriends have died, so don't go near Kelly."
And you don't have any problem finding the humor in that?
At the time I did, of course, but now no, you have to look back and you have to laugh. And I've got to add in to this, all of these happened at or on a holiday, a day or 2 after or before. And now our family thing is, we joke when a holiday's coming up and we say, well, wonder who's going to be next. You know, nobody's sick right now, but nobody was really sick at the time. They died. It was just totally unexpected.
Melody, what would you say to people that are watching you and watching this right now, and they would say, "That is so wrong. You can't laugh at that. You shouldn't laugh at that. That's serious." What would your response be to that?
I'd say yes, you can, because at the time the memory is so painful, and even things come upon you unexpectedly at a moment when you're not thinking about it, and you can start crying just at the drop of a pen. I would say yes, you can, because we've been through this. It's our experience, and we can choose to laugh whenever we want to or make fun of it, because it helps us, each one of us and myself, to get through things by laughing and making fun of it.
So interesting what Melody said about making fun of it. Making fun, making it fun. But we don't do that at first. Notice she said that. She didn't make fun of it at first. It took him a while to feel the feeling, to be sad. And then in the reflection and talking about it, they start having fun with it. And again, it turns down the volume. That's what it does. Momento Mori. Remember you're dying. Remember we're all dying. And remember, after the person that you care about and love dies and you're sad, and you have every reason to be sad to do that, don't stay there. And the way to get through that is the humor and the laughter. The next series coming up is when people are actively dying, how you laugh at that. Sister Loretta McGuire, who's a marvelous woman, is going to take us through how she works with hospice. And Dr. Patch Adams and his great friend and very funny Dr. Bowen White are going to explain how it's possible at the moment when people are dying, how to bring joy and humor and lightness to help everybody through the process, including the caregiver. Don't miss the next episode. Momento Mori.